settle down and take your respective seats. As you know that we are running way behind schedule, we'd like to begin our first technical session. This session, ladies and gentlemen, is on the topic of sustainable public road transport, challenges and the future roadmap. So without any further ado, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome and invite on the dais our session chair, Mr. Alan Flosch, Secretary General of the International Association of Public Transport. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to kindly welcome him with a big round of applause. May I now invite our session co-chair, Mr. Rajendra Kumar Kataria, the Managing Director of Karnataka SRTC. I think he will be joining us very shortly. Meanwhile, I'd like to welcome and invite our eminent speakers for this session, Mr. Dario Hidalgo from Embark, Mr. Kiran K. Kapila, Chairman of the International Road Federation, Mr. S. K. Lohia, Chief Engineer, Northern Railways, Mr. Anders Kronströmer, MD of Scania, Ms. Shreya Gadepalli, Regional Director, India Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, and Mr. Dermot Dixon, who is the Managing Director of SIDAC Private Limited, which is a Nor-Prem SA company. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us our session chair, Mr. Alan Flosch, who was selected as the Secretary General of the International Association of Public Transport in September 2011 by UITP Executive Board. This appointment acknowledges his long-standing commitment to public transport on the international stage. He was previously the Chairman of the Finance and Commerce Subcommittee of the UITP Metro Committee. May I now request him to kindly make his opening remarks and chair this very relevant session.
Thank you, Madam. I hope everything can find a seat. For this first session, as you know, we're running short of time, so we want to squeeze a little bit this session so that to give you also the time to raise questions at the end of the few presentations that we're going to follow. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, knows that the challenges that are for India in terms of urban development. The last time I was here, on that very day I was here, and the day was not very good in terms of air quality. I remember that the Supreme Court of India released an injunction to the government of India to take 15 measures to improve the air quality in Delhi. This injunction was criticized because by that day some of the measures that were recommended or decided were not really effective. But what was really interesting in that regard was that on that day, on that very day, the level of small particles in the air was 10 times the level allowed by legislation. And in the room of the Supreme Court, it was 4 times. So that you can imagine that the judges there were really personally affected by what was coming out and took a strong decision on that day. So it shows that the challenge for India in terms of pollution, in terms of congestion, in terms of urbanization, in terms of growth of the population is so huge that it's about time that strong measure and bold measure are taken to fix it. I understand that the new government has been quite adamant to do more in that respect, and there has been a lot of new missions or program or scheme launched those days with a lot of money involved or engaged at least politically on those programs. So it's clear now that we are at a very interesting time because things might be changing. Although when I came from the center of the city this morning, I still had the feeling that the motorization, private motorization is still growing up, and that the bus industry still need to be more organized and developed if we want this to happen. We have around the table this morning people that have a local experience and are really gathering the experience that could give us some insight about how we were going to tackle in India the various challenges that are ahead, together with the help of the government, and both on the union level and on the state level. There are some presentations here that are covering, and I guess there was a list of people here. For time reason, we're going to rearrange a little bit that list. And I will start giving the floor to Mr. Kiran Kapila on my left side, a well-known specialist, chairman of the International Road Federation, which is obviously one of the issues in India also. And he's an expert on road safety, as you know. Please go to the floor. As you know, this is a terrible issue in the whole developing world. And I remember figures that are terrible in terms of number of youngsters that are killed every year. And I don't even mean touch about the wounded people, but just the killed people, young people that they disappear, a generation, a whole city that disappeared just because of accident on the road. So the topic is of the essence. Although I'm not in favor of many new roads, I'm sure we could be in favor of new good roads and safe roads, and rearranging the engineering of those roads. So, Mr. Kapila, you have the floor to tell us what the challenges are in that respect.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleagues on the dais, speakers, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation would be on sustainable public transport solution with focus on vehicular information, but primarily on enhancing road safety. A quick brief on IRF. We are a non-government organization and we are committed to sustainable road development and safe road mobility. We have an observer status at the United Nations and 2 program centers, one in Geneva, another in Washington. We cover road safety, environment and sustainability, intelligent transport systems, road financing and economics. We are a unique organization where we have both the government as well as the private sector as members. The road safety scenario in India has been rather dismal. If you look at the last 1 decade, there have been 1.2 million deaths in India. These amounts to about 3% loss of GDP. We have just 1% of global vehicular population, but it contributes to 10% road accidents globally. In 2014, we had 1 death every 4 minutes, which amounts to 1 jumbo crashing on Indian roads every single day. The affected age group is 15 to 44 years, which account for almost 60% of the fatalities. Out of these, two-wheeler account for 25% of total road accident deaths. The economic loss of all this amounts to over 100 lakh crores. This is the kind of damage that happens. More soldiers die on Indian roads than in the battlefield. Can you imagine that? That's the reality. So, with the economic loss of 1 lakh crore a year, it is highly important that we all work concertedly to check this menace. The need of the hour is to promote safer modes of road transport. If you have lesser vehicles on road, if we can help to decongest the roads to some extent, we will be able to save lives by reducing accidents. And for that we need a public sustainable transport system. Shifting to other modes of transport will also help. We need to have people walking, cycling, mass transit usage of transportation, not necessarily congesting the roads. But for that, we need essentially footpaths free of encroachment. We need cycle tracks to do cycling. Doable, let's do it. To enhance road safety, the design of the system, including infrastructure and human resources and data management, need upgradation. The bus transport caters to 85 to 90% of the population. It's economical and convenient mode of transportation. It is managed by the state road transport corporations to a large extent. There have been innovations in low-floor buses for the disabled and elderly, air-conditioned buses to attract new customer base concept, and air-conditioned bus stops. Now, people would shift to buses more, provided we are able to provide them comfortable means of transportation. A lot of middle class would get shifted to these buses, provided they are provided in the right manner and they are dependable mode of transport. We started with, in Delhi, buses, air-conditioned buses. Look at the present scenario of these as an example. 50% of these are non-operating as of day. They are in the garage. For reasons best known, we have to tackle these issues and make this transport sustainable if you want really to attract more people to take buses instead of their own transport. And one of the main reasons I'm told, I'm not an expert in the field, is that the horsepower of these buses is inadequate, therefore frequent breakdowns, besides many other reasons. You give a contract for maintenance of buses. It is subcontracted. As a result, the maintenance is done very poorly because the amounts left are not adequate for proper maintenance. What do? We need to see that there is an arrangement in which serviceability is a standard for buses which are purchased. Maintenance, the man who maintains those buses must ensure 95% serviceability. If it improves further, pay him extra. If it goes down, punish him with penalties. Challenges. We had poor track record with road accident killer buses. Again, we fixed the price per kilometer, but don't ask for records. With the fixed price, even for per kilometer for any private bus, giving incentive if the bus is not involved in any accident, punish him if there are more accidents. Serviceability of vehicles has to be ensured in the right manner. There is again, if you want to maintain safe vehicles, provide retrofitting of all safety measures which need to be provided. Our buses with the state road transportation corporations need this urgently. Retrofit them with all the safety measures which are necessary so that you can have safety taken care of and safe transportation becomes a reality. These are some of the mandatory road safety features which I recommend. Anti-lock braking systems, anti-skid features, alcolocks to check drunken driving, side run protection devices, rear run protection devices, FUPDs. These can easily be retrofitted in all buses and must be done as a matter of priority. Again, seat belt for drivers, portable chairs, first aid trauma care. There need to be an appropriate standard of maintenance. Our checking system to declare whether a bus should ply on a road or not, it is roadworthy or not, needs to be strengthened post haste and in the right manner. The roadworthiness standards of the fleet must be ensured. Please don't bring a vehicle on the road which is not roadworthy. This could be done and encouraged by PPP, which the Minister was mentioning too. But then we have problems. There are centers which have been set up by people to check the quality of testing. Testing standards were set up in Delhi, but the party is not allowed to run the center. Why would somebody then come and invest in PPP? So please correct the scenario if you want to attract PPP. For buses, we need to provide on the roads bus lanes, and bus lay-bys must be there for the bus to stand so that it does not disturb the rest of the road system. Simple, doable, do it. Thirteen cities of India feature in the top 25 polluting cities of the world. A bad scenario. Chairman mentioned in his opening remarks, brought out this issue. The Honourable Minister brought it out. I hope we will be able to shift to different kinds of fuel and also in a time-bound manner to electricals, more-based transport to reduce levels of pollution. To keep the roads roadworthy, we have to keep doing road audits to identify the defects in the road system, and these defects, which could be even pointed out as black spots, must be removed in a time-bound manner on a prioritized basis so that the maintenance requirement for buses reduces, you have better mileage per kilometer of fuel and per liter of fuel. That's what you need to work on. In conclusion, I would like to say that we need to have just 1 minute more, and this is, I conclude here. Biofuels should be encouraged. Strict road worthiness tests to be encouraged and ensured. Bus stops must be there for the bus lay-bys. And let us all resolve to work relentlessly for safe roads and safe road mobility. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapila, for this comprehensive of what should be done. Before the hearing, the meeting, you told me that what you need is a push from the very top of society, and you remind me about the exercise that made the President of France, Mr. Chirac, some 10 years ago, where he said this road safety is a national issue. And he pushed so well that after a few years, there was a reduction of 20%, and it's still going on in France. So I think if we could have from the government of India a major push from your Prime Minister saying how road safety is important. You know, everything is known. All the recipes are known. The problem is to do it, and it's a more question of education and capacity building than anything. And you remember this famous sentence of President Roosevelt that say, if you do not believe in education, try ignorance. And I think, you know, in this road safety stuff, it could help a lot. Let's go to the second speaker. I'm sorry again, we'll change the list a little bit for time issue. You want to? Yeah. Most welcome.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person representing the STU here. So some of the issues which I think before we go further, The first issue which I think is very, very important in terms of strengthening the public transport is the basic infrastructure. In many places you will find that the basic infrastructure is missing. I think there we may think of the participation by the private people or by the government. That is one issue. Second issue is most of the time, especially in Indian conditions, is that we fail in providing the first and last mile connectivity. That is again a major challenge, because until you provide that, the adequate participation of the public transport, capturing the larger share of the market is again a major issue. Then congestion management is again a major issue, because the public space by everybody, and then the ratio by individuals, I think that uses some area to see that how much public space should be given to whom. So that is a major area which I think we need to provide. We generally, when we talk in this kind of workshops, we always tend to talk only about the urban areas, but we fail to link the two places actually, the urban area and rural area. And we have to, I think, find out the linkages, how we can connect the places actually. When we talk about connecting people, so we should also talk about how we can have connectivity between the remote corners of the society. The most important part I personally feel is that the financial sustainability of the STUs, because as far as I know in India, till last year, the last year or last few years, not a single STU has made any profit. So their financial position is very bad. So then we have to think about how to have financial sustainability, maybe financial independence, kind of subsidies, kind of other direct or indirect benefits which can be provided to the STU so that they can deliver better. Then there's another issue is that, especially in the Asian countries, is the regulation of the modes of transportation. We have multiple modes. We have private players, we have the government players, then we have two-wheelers, three-wheelers, taxis. So all kind of modes are available. So I think some kind of regulation so that everybody can work in harmony and they can deliver this thing. And then pollution is again a major issue. I think whenever we talk about maybe the designing of engine or utilization of fuel, I think that is an area where we should work. Now, and then lastly, I would say that when we talk about the policy, planning and policy, in our country we develop cities first and then we think about providing infrastructure. In fact, if you see that the public transport can give a good shape to a city. If we have a good public transport, the city progress develops. So I think that is another area I personally feel that we should, at a different level, at the time of planning, we should include the public transport need and provide adequate infrastructure while planning. I think these are the areas from the side of the STU. I personally feel that when we discuss, I think we can focus on these issues. Okay, that's a good point.
So we continue with some sort of link with the first topic, which was safety, by giving the floor to a gentleman coming from Australia, Mr. Dermot Dixon. He has to take a flight soon, so we'll give him priority after Mr. Kapila. Mr. Dermot Dixon is a businessman. He's the MD of a company by SIDAC, PTI, which is part of the group Knorr-Bremse. For those who are in public transport, they know that's one of the brake manufacturers. And he's going to talk about enhancing safety through simulators, which is one of the specialties of this group. Please.
Thank you, Alan. Welcome and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, delegates and friends. It is quite apt that the timing of my presentation has been put forward. I think it is a nice segue from the first speaker, Mr. Kapila, and certainly in regards to the comments made by the Honourable Minister earlier this morning regarding road safety and its focus in the Indian psyche at the moment. What I hope to run through over the next few minutes and 10 slides is how I believe the adoption of simulation and simulation technology can improve driver training outcomes, and touch on one of the 5 pillars that the Indian government is announcing from a central government perspective to improve the nation's death toll on the roads, which, as we've heard, is very high. So I will run through a number of slides that will firstly give you a snapshot of those figures which have been repeated today, some of the changes in technology that make simulation more affordable now than it used to be in the past, and how and where other countries are adopting this technology to improve road safety in their cities and towns. I won't reiterate all the facts that were mentioned today, but it's clear from some of the bullet points I have here on the presentation that the urbanization of India, the development of India is meaning, or has meant, more roads are coming, or more cars are coming onto the roads. And what that has led to is higher death tolls, higher fatalities, and the numbers are excessive. Some of the facts there, if I look at one, it has 1% of the world's vehicles, but 10% of the world's fatalities. And that's something that I know the Indian government and the STUs are very keen on improving upon in the future via numerous means. But one of the key points that I saw from those statistics was that 78% of accidents are deemed to be the fault of the driver. And we heard from the Honourable Minister today a fact that's not very flattering, but that it's very easy to get a licence in India, and that they're given probably too freely, and it's uncertain the competency level of drivers on the roads when they attain their licence, what level that's at. And particularly with regards to this audience, which I think is largely bus orientated, it states that 32% of accidents are caused by heavy vehicles, buses, and probably more so trucks, I would say. So that's a key point to show that it's not just passenger vehicles, but also public vehicles that are involved in road accidents and contribute to the statistics we see. Going into a little bit more detail, that shows that how the breakup was in the recent statistics from 2011 to 2013. A huge number of accidents, and a large proportion of those being driver related. What the key thing in this slide is saying is that the conditions aren't necessarily improving. As you can see, the percentage has largely remained the same from 2011 to 2013. Even though there has been efforts from central and state organisations to improve on a number of aspects to bring that number down. And the new Road Act that the Honourable Minister mentioned, that's going to be hopefully passed in the next session of Parliament, will hopefully bring about further changes that will improve on these conditions. But one of the things that can be done without any legislation is to look at the education and training and solutions that are being used elsewhere to improve learning outcomes and driver training. And that, in a nutshell, has been in simulation. Simulation has proven in areas and countries where it's been adopted to reduce the accident rate for novice drivers by 66%, an 80% improvement in mean time between accidents, I think that's a bus reference, and also to save fuel. And for state transport undertakings who have lots of vehicles, that is also a big factor and a big cost in your businesses. So there is two or three major factors there, but one is also it gives objective proof that the driver has had competency assessment done on his ability. And in an age of growing litigation, both here and in other places of the world, this offers a lot of reassurance to directors that if drivers are involved in a fatality, that they can show to the regulator or others who may come and investigate that their drivers have been trained to the best of their ability, and here is a record of that training. And that can be a recording of the simulator experience and exercise that was undertaken. And it's not subjective, it's objective proof that at one time in his life he actually understood the rules of the road and knew how to drive correctly. I mentioned that it was a technology that was a little bit unaffordable for maybe the mass population. Even a decade ago it was driven largely in the defence space, but now technology improvement and advancements have made it an affordable technology. And not only affordable, but improvements in technology have made it a more realistic experience. From motion systems to vision systems that are motion sensing, to high fidelity graphics, to interconnectivity, to instructor-driven scenarios that offer a the highest level of realism that can be achieved in a simulated environment, and that ultimately improves the outcome of the training. The Honourable Minister talked about better practices. I would agree, better practices are needed, but better practices using the best technology should be the focus, because they have clearly showed to net the benefits that I showed on the earlier slides. One of the key strengths, of course, is that simulators, you can do stuff in them that you can't do on the real world. Inclement weather, black ice, hazardous driving roads, scenarios that you can't replicate safely in a real environment. So these are targeted training modules that give the driver an experience firsthand in a safe environment some of the hazards they can experience out on the road. So there's obviously simulation is part of a broader training package. I'm not suggesting that it replaces practical driver training. That will always be necessary, but it does at least form an objective proof in the licensing process even that an individual understands and has achieved a certain level of competence before he even sits in a car, which is a great benefit to the people who are on the roads when learner drivers are doing their first trial in the real environment. Some of the countries that have adopted this, I think I'll pick one here, which is probably closer to the Indian market conditions, is Brazil. It is reasonably regulated that to get a passenger car driver license, you need to undertake simulator training. So that has now been mandated, driving the demand for this technology in that market, because they, like India, had unacceptably high road fatalities. And this is one of the measures they are taking, and it's soon to be followed, I believe, on commercial vehicles. In India, the government itself has, through the Ministry of Road Transport Holdings, invited states to set up IDTRs and have offered subsidies to develop in a PPP model for driver training centres. And again, the Minister mentioned that in his speech earlier today as well. And they have a provision for simulators in that training centre. So they know the solution. I believe they're acting on the solution. And it's going to be really important to see over the next 12 months or so that market and that demand be met from suppliers in the market, of which there are some. And to conclude, basically better training means safer roads. And simulators can offer a scientific solution for better training in a cost-effective, affordable investment in safety and fuel efficiency. And a better trained driver ultimately will result in a safer public transport system. And a final comment, safety is everyone's responsibilities, both private and public. So I'm very keen to see these measures being adopted in a broader sense in the Indian market space over the coming years. Thank you.
That was good. That's one thing that can be done immediately without waiting too long, training people. And from my experience as chief of a large public transport company, I tell you it's working very well. And simulation is not a major investment. It's not that expensive, and it's very effective in terms of... do you want to say something? Thank you for this and a safe trip where you have to go. Let's move and then go back to the list as it was. I'm afraid, Dario, you're going to be the next on the floor. Dario Hidalgo from Embark. I guess many people here know Embark. It's a very rich company. At least the parent company is very rich. And they're using their money to train and to help developing country to develop a new sustainable mode of transportation. And I think we can take advantage of listening to Dario. I just want to mention as a joke that they are very BRT biased, which is fair, good enough, but it's...
we are in a bus
we know each other, and the BRT is a very good option in many cases, so please, Dario, do.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure coming back to India after 8 years of this opportunity of learning a lot here in India and also sharing some knowledge from different parts of the world. And WRI, the organization I belong to, it's a research-oriented organization that really looks into implementation, not just talking about things, making a difference in the ground. And we have been fortunate enough to be working with the Indian government and with several cities around India and see things changing for improved public transportation in many parts of this great country. I don't need to go really into the details of the problems we're facing, and the problems are all the time in the newspaper. Like today, they talk about congestion. We are facing the issue of road safety that was well presented in the previous talks, and also there's other issues on public health because of the air pollution, and we are facing the great challenge of climate change. When we put all these things together, it's about 10% of the GDP, what is costing in average to several countries in the world. In India, with a growth of 6-7% a year, it means that because of the problems and the externalities of the transport system, you are losing 1 full year of growth, a little bit more than 1 year of growth every year. So it's a constraining opportunity, and this country continues to flourish into the future, but these kind of things are holding it back. So it's very important to face these things, and just talking about one of these 4 aspects, the aspect of climate change, which is being debated and discussed, and this year countries are expected to get together and find a future, a scenario in which all the countries commit to targets so climate change greenhouse gas emissions are reduced. It's a real big problem, and transport has a lot to do with it. 23% of the emissions come from the transport sector. So we have been working with other organizations, in this case with the United Kingdom Department of Economic Development, in creating tools to find scenarios and promote policies that are work in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and their effects on climate change. We call this a global calculator. You can download directly, not download, play it directly in the screen of your computers and find different ways you can combine measures from the energy sector, the industry sector, and the transport sector, with one question that is very important to solve. And the question is it possible to continue growing the quality of life globally and reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And actually the answer is positive. Yes, it is possible to do it. Yes, it is possible to do it if we apply the very principle that Mahatma Gandhi brought to us some years ago, that the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. So we need to change the way we consume and we live globally to be able to meet this target. In the terms of transport, which is what we are talking today, it means at the urban level to work in compact, connected, and coordinated cities. If we continue to spreading out our cities as they have been spreading over time, we will see that we need extra travel, we need long distance, we need motor vehicles to get around. So we have 2 opportunities: to grow like the American cities that are very sprawl, or work more in the compact environment of European cities. And the difference is enormous. When you work in a sprawl city with the same population like Atlanta compared to the population of Barcelona, are actually pretty much the same population, you see that the impact, the footprint, and the impacts in this aspect of climate change are totally different. And India is growing the cities right now and has the opportunity to grow them more sustainably. And growing them more sustainably in what we have been working around the world means 3 things. 1, avoiding the need of long trips. then shifting travel to the most efficient modes, and last but not least, improve the technology and the operations of the systems. If we are able to put these three things together, avoiding shifting and improving travel, we are able to meet the challenges. In terms of transport, we know that different cities have different needs. It's not that you need to apply the same solution in every place of the world, but to apply different solutions that cater to different cities. But we have examples. It's not that it's not known. As Mr. Flush said, we know the solutions, but we need to adapt, and it's more on the how that on the what is working on. We know that we can continue traveling further. We know that we don't need to limit economic growth, but we know at the same time that we don't need to grow at the same rate that we are growing right now. We need the developed countries to reduce their travel, yes, but we need in developing countries like India not to grow to the same levels that are unsustainable in other parts of the world. And these results are very well based in science, very well based on good analysis, showing that it is possible to meet the global targets if we do the right thing. And technology is coming to the rescue. It's helping us. Starting in 2000, many technologies have exploded that are helping us to have a better future in terms of sustainable mobility. Car sharing, bike sharing, complete streets, transit apps, car-free zones, low-emission zones, all of these things that help a more sustainable future have been growing steadily in the previous years, and especially after 2000, thanks to the introduction of information technologies. There are extraordinary things happening in many places of the world. For instance, the growth of bicycle use to work in places that it was not used, like the US, is growing really, really fast. They probably will catch up with the trends in Northern Europe, where more than 30% of the trips in cities like Amsterdam or Copenhagen, Berlin, or other cities in Sweden and Germany a lot of people is using bicycles for their everyday trip. And it's a developed country. It's developed areas. So the bicycle has become and is growing really fast as one mode of sustainable mobility into the future. There's other things happening that are really great. One is the use of technology to be able to do congestion pricing, or things that probably are not that acceptable in India, but that are working really well in China, with vehicle quotas and the maximum number of vehicles that are allowed to be part of the transport mix. And then have an opportunity not to create, when they don't have that money to keep building and building roads, they are limiting the number of vehicles. These things are not happening as fast as is needed, but are examples. And the other thing that is happening and is great, and there is a very recent report by UITP showing that the numbers in terms of public transportation are looking good, is the introduction of better public transport systems. There have been metro systems for 150 years around the world. There are about 190 cities that have these metro systems, and India is also growing with new cities coming with metro systems. But one thing that happened just recently, only 30 years, has been the introduction of BRT. BRT has become a mode of choice for integrated transport systems because of its low cost, rapid implementation, and high impact. But it's not a battle between metro and BRT. It is about integration of systems that provide mobility. In these just 30 years, more cities around the world have implemented BRT than in 150 years of metros. And there are some cities in India, as there are some cities in Brazil or in Mexico, in many parts of the world. So this is a good example if it is applied right, if it is done with the right planning, with the right implementation, with the right maintenance and right operations. There are other examples of things happening. the growth of bike sharing systems, the growth of car sharing systems, and the growth of technology. So we are in a scenario where we are in a very difficult situation that needs a lot of activity. There are things happening, but unfortunately, the future, the things are not happening at the required pace. So she come up with this card. I travel all around the world to come and share with you this presentation, and the presentation is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dario, for this quick overview of everything which is possible. Excellent. So we see there are plenty of things that can help, especially in India. And I'm going to go on further by giving the floor to Mr. Loya, who I understand is a very well-known expert in public transport for the last few years. Something which is really interesting in his paper, I understand that's what he wants to emphasize, is that, you know, public transport by bus is generally viewed as not the best quality of transport, which is unfortunate, because the bus is a great mode of transport, whether it's a BRT or it's a standard bus. And the whole issue is about quality of the service, the quality of the comfort that you have. And that's part of what really Mr. Loya was going to tell us. Everybody knows him. He's a prestigious inter-railway service of engineer member. So he knows the rail, but he's also very much involved in buses. So please, tell us about quality transport.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we had good presentations regarding what is sustainable transport, what are the trends which we are having in the world as far as sustainable transport is concerned, and what are we facing in India. So I'm trying to take you through transforming the city bus transport scene in India over last about 8 years or so. Many people thought that since now I'm back with my parent cadre, that is railways, so I'll be talking about railways. No, I'm talking about buses, the city buses, which we championed from Ministry of Urban Development through JNNURM. If you very quickly go into the present scenario, I think other speakers have already spoken. We are urbanizing fast, and we are going to have number of people added in next about 20 years what we added in last about 100 years. Not only people are adding, but the vehicles are adding at 8 times the people which are adding in the cities. So how do we move those people? And with this vehicles is the issue of air pollution, which I think those who are in Delhi, they must be facing this headlines on a daily basis. The gridlock situation, the air quality, 11% of the Delhi population suffering from asthma and allergic rhinitis. A lot of people dying out of this air pollution, and they are not only dying on air pollution, they are also dying on roads, as was brought out by Mr. Kapila, one jumbo jet crashing every day. So while one this MH370, which was lost in air about 8-9 months ago, still the whole world is talking about it. But what we are doing on Indian roads every day, I think that gravity is not sinking in. So these are the present scenarios, but then how do we move people? So before that, we'll have to see exactly how is the trip length in various cities. And if you see, most of the cities, the trip lengths are less than 5 kilometers. Most of the cities, majority of the trips. If it is less than 5 or less than 10 kilometers, then what is the most sustainable, optimal mode of transport, the appropriate technology? So if it's just a 3 kilometer trip, which we are trying to present here, if you walk 3 kilometers, then you will take about roughly 30 minutes. But if you take cycle, then you are going to take only about less than 15 minutes at a comfortable speed. But if you take a bus rapid transit system, so there is excess time to reach the bus stop, then waiting time and travel, and then reach your destination. So BRT becomes slower in 3 kilometers. But if you take a metro, then you have access and egress time which is far more as compared to bus, because of the grade change that you have to go for most of the metro solutions. Though it travels faster, but ultimately if you take end-to-end journey, it takes slightly longer as compared to BRT when it is 3 kilometer trip. But if you have car, and assuming that your parking place is very near to your place and you do not have challenges in parking, many people in fact when they are traveling to Connaught Place or Karal Bagh, the time taken in parking sometimes goes to half an hour or so, just trying to find parking. So that becomes a faster mode. So it's obvious that if you want to have sustainable transport, then the obvious answer is public transport by bus, besides pedestrianization and cycling, which my colleagues talked about. But easier said than done. When we started looking at how to improve the city bus transport scene, have quality bus service, we found that we were faced with numerous challenges. And what the minister just said, that many times people convert the opportunities into problems, but when we were faced with all these challenges, we tried to convert all these challenges into opportunities. So I'll just share with you what all challenges we faced. One of my colleagues, Mr. Kataria, he just mentioned what are the challenges and what are the issues we must focus on. Yes, on policy level, the first and foremost thing is whose baby is public transport. Is it considered as a public service? No. It is seen as that people would find way of going somewhere to somewhere on their own. Water supply, sewerage, drainage, etc. is considered as essential public service, not public transport. There is absolutely no clear-cut demarcation of roles between state government and the urban local bodies. Parking is free, mostly and especially on roads which are meant for moving. The master plan of the city, in fact, the master plan does not provide for the compact cities. It promotes urban sprawl. It does not even provide for many times the depots, etc. that you need, or the public transport infrastructure that you need. There is no dedicated fund for urban transport. The specifications for the buses were not there. The minister talked about the bus body code. In fact, the bus body code had been in the offing since 2005. The taxation structure is very skewed. In fact, we are taxing the poor to subsidize the rich. That is the reality today. The institutional issues, there is no unified metropolitan transport authority, no authority for doing the technical level function of planning, no entity for operation management of common services, and as a result each authority is working in silo approach and trying to create their own infrastructure. No city bus, city specific special purpose vehicle for operations. If you look into the infrastructure, lack of depots, I think most of the STUs which are here must be facing the same problem. The depots are not only sometimes non-existent, but they are insufficient in terms of space. The bus stations, the minister also talked, the bus ports he was talking, they are generally quite shabby. And many times the funny thing is that the bus stations, where should they be, they are decided on the potential of the advertisement revenue rather than the need of the public. If you look at the industry, we had only two major manufacturers, oligopoly situation. Industry was focusing only on truck chassis rather than the bus. The production capacity of the bus manufacturers was limited. The finance to private vehicles was cheaper as compared to the buses, and the buses were not getting finance for the working capital for the city bus service. In terms of operators, the kind of policies, regulations that we had promoted only permit and challenge. With that, we had bus operators with only single or two buses. So the concept of quality did not exist. The professional service for maintenance, etc. was not there. In terms of regulation, the fare fixation system was quite ad hoc. No regulator for defining and monitoring the vehicle specifications and various service level standards, and the safety certification system was quite lax. In terms of capacity, again that issue was brought out. The STUs, the urban local body, didn't have transport planners. The capacity to understand the nuances of urban transport were rather limited. ITS was considered to be too flashy a thing, and it was not at all appreciated the time it was being promoted. The drivers were neither trained in safety or fuel conservation. So what major initiatives then we took to convert all these challenges into opportunities? We brought out the first ever urban bus specifications. While the bus body code was in the offing, after 2 years of efforts of consultation with all the stakeholders, the first ever urban bus specifications were brought out on 2nd December 2008, moving from the truck chassis to a bus chassis, the low floor, semi-low floor, intelligent transport system enabled buses. While implementing that, we faced certain challenges, so we came out with the revised version of the urban bus specification UBS2 in May 2013, which were very detailed specifications, and for the first time we included the concept of premium segment, articulated buses, driver space, and the way to move forward in terms of tightening specifications over a period of time so that the industry knows the roadmap. These specifications would not have been adopted because the specification issued by the ministry was not under an act, so they were all recommendatory. So what we did, that when the funding for the buses came in January 2009 as part of the second stimulus package under JNNURM, all these specifications were made mandatory for the buses procured under central government funding. However, that funding was limited only to 65 mission cities, and there was an unsatiated demand from various other cities. So we came out with second round of funding. In first round we had about 15,000 buses which were funded for about 60 cities. In the next round it was made open to all types of cities, and not only the buses but also the associated infrastructure, and under this about 10,000 buses were funded. These funding of buses would have remained only partial solution had we not taken steps for making them sustainable, which was done through imposing certain conditions of sanctions for reforms in the field of urban transport, reforms at the level of state level, that is setting up of Unified Metropolitan Transport Authority, dedicated urban transport fund, land use transport integration, transit-oriented development, single nodal department for urban transport, and waiver of state taxes on city bus service. At city level, promotion of again the dedicated urban transport fund, parking policy so as to manage the demand for the parking and also the use of private vehicles, advertisement policy so as to bring revenue on revenue of the advertisement on public transport and public utilities, a modern city bus transport system through a city-specific SPV, multimodal integration, and the traffic information management control centers for the operation and management control of the city bus transport systems. It was not an easy task. There were challenges, and the industry, STUs, nobody was in favor of implementation of all these changes, because changes always registered. But after the initial period of I think about 1 year, the STUs, the bus industry, everybody overwhelmingly came over and they adopted these buses, all these reforms, and they were taken very well by the public, and the outcomes were that from 20 cities which had organized city bus service in 2006, we had about 177 cities with organized city bus service in 31 states and union territories. We moved from truck chassis to a bus chassis. We had modern low floor, semi-low floor buses with ITS features, which helped in branding of city bus service as a product which can be sold to public. The image of city bus service took a great leap forward. The safety was improved through the automated doors. In fact, the door closing was made mandatory as part of the specifications, and I can very proudly say that in Delhi, when we used to have about 1,000 deaths on account of boarding, deboarding in running buses, it reduced to 0. The security was enhanced through the cameras on bus, and in fact when this unfortunate incident of Nirbhaya happened, people were asking that what are you trying to do for the buses? We said that we have already mandated that, we are just going to retrade, that's all. And at that time these cameras, they were thought to be a luxury, which are now widely accepted as a necessity. Women empowerment, it helped because with the safe mode of travel, ladies, they were not restrained by the mobility needs. They could travel by public transport freely. The sustainable services through better organizational backup happened, and the various reforms, they were implemented in many cities. And for the first time, we had public-private participation in city bus service. And ultimately, this bus funding became the most visible program of JNNURM, with JNNURM logo on these buses going around in the cities round the clock in most of the cities around India. And we could transform from this vision, I would say the look of the city bus to this modern city bus services across India. All said and done, but if we do not have as way forward certain impetus. So I'll just take 1 minute. So all these urban transport reforms have to be implemented with more vigor. These urban bus specifications have to be notified under the Motor Vehicle Act, so that all the buses, whether funded by central government or private funded, they have to be conforming to this. The dedicated urban transport fund has to be set up at central, state and urban local body level. The funding of buses has to be further taken up under the smart cities and the Amrut scheme. And the funding this time has to be tied up with the operational parameters, rather than, because it was mentioned that 50% of the buses which have been inducted are lying idle for some reason or the other, so that the availability to the public improves. The setting up of National Urban Transport Authority of India, State Level Urban Transport Authority and Unified Metropolitan Transport Authority with legislative backing for the regulation part, the amendment of the Motor Vehicle Act for promoting public transport, and the amendment of the DP rules to make land available for depots and passenger infrastructure, and monitoring of all this progress through service level benchmarking for urban transport, and in the end, extensive capacity building. That is the answer for the way forward. Thank you.
This is quite promising. I know India is huge, so I guess it has to be continued if we want to have the whole continent be covered by this reform, but it's promising compared to what it was some years ago, and I hope it will go this way. In this respect, you mentioned the fact that the manufacturing part of the market was very much a duopolist, if I say so. So we have the pleasure to give the word to a newcomer, I mean, quote, newcomer, it's not really a newcomer, but a big group of manufacturing of bus and truck. Mr. Anders Grundströmer is a businessman, a long experience with Scania, and together with other manufacturers, they're trying to open the market, which I think is very good for India. And so, please, Mr. Anders, please do.
Yeah, thank you for be calling a newcomer when you're 125 years in the business. but to India, yes. Actually, we started in India in 2007, so it's close to 10 years now. Dignitaries and friends from the transport business, I am grateful to have the opportunity here to talk to you, the members of the ASRTUs. The ASRTU's active involvement in promotion of public transportation, its constant efforts towards managerial and technological upgrade in the sector, collection and dissemination of information have made it pivotal institution in the road transport sector. Given the ASRTU's eminent position as an advocate for better public transportation throughout India, I would like to take this opportunity to bring to the table what in my mind is one of the biggest challenges faced by Indian cities. An urgent need to create robust network for sustainable mobility. In each and every Indian city, and it's here and now. We do not have the luxury of time, not in the cities already suffering from the health consequences of emissions from vehicle traffic, nor in the new cities that this country is planning for and their public transport systems. The time for action is here and now. The evidence has mounted, as said by many speakers here, a report titled Road Transportation in India 2010 to 2030, Emissions, Pollution and Health Impacts illustrates the scale of the challenge. And it stated that in 6 cities surveyed, it's Delhi, Kanpur, Bangalore, Pune, Chennai and Mumbai, by the Central Board of Pollution, concluded that the transport sector contributes to more than 30% of the ambient air quality in these cities, either directly from the vehicle exhaust or indirectly via the resuspension of dust from the roads. India's transportation energy use will grow about 5.5% a year, significantly higher than the world average on 1.4%. More than quadrupling the total energy use from the road transport in 2035. Likewise, the per capita energy use for passengers vehicles in India is estimated to increase threefold. The urgency of implementing clean transportation is also significant as the health concerns from transport-related pollution is mounting in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai. For Indian cities, the time to implement sustainable transport solutions is here and now. The technology is here and now. And the only way that can have a real impact on air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions and health impacts from the transport sector is to do so by addressing the issues on multiple fronts and involving all stakeholders in the society. Policymakers, urban planners and companies which are offering green solutions to challenge the public transport in an economical, social and environmental sustainable way. Our company, Scania, is of the viewpoint is that in the long term, it will not be possible to use private cars for transportation in the same way as we do today. And that smart, sustainable public transport systems which take people out of the cars and onto buses will have to play a larger role. Although mentioned by several people here, that needs some other things than buses. It needs better last mile connectivity. It needs better IT and smartphone systems. It needs BRS, BRT systems, etc. Today, more than 50% of the world's population lives in big cities, and this trend is increasing. Health problems caused by the increasing emissions from traffic are hard to ignore. More deaths worldwide per year are linked to air pollution than to automobile accidents. While globally, Scania has been addressing this challenge by producing commercial wild transportation solutions for over 20 years, it is now fortifying its position as provider of sustainable transport systems in India. Scania sees biofuels as one key of decarbonized heavy-duty transport and has products available for buses and trucks for all 3 biofuels. If produced according to correct sustainable principles, biofuels also contribute to local energy security while creating local jobs and helping rural development. Today, there are only 3 biofuels commercially available: bioethanol, biodiesel and biogas. Bioethanol is typically the most cost-efficient and sustainable on a global level. And local biofuels is also a welcome remedy for the increasingly expensive oil and diesel import. While the company introduced its first revolutionary ethanol-powered bus in Sweden more than 20 years ago, its first solution here in India came in August 22, 2014. we launched the Scania Green Bus in Nagpur. This is a firm step in its commitment to provide India with sustainable transport solutions. Using ethanol as a vehicle fuel is the best example of what can be done currently in the sustainable development work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and local air pollution. Ethanol can be sourced locally, which will reduce the need for import of oil, and it creates local jobs. As a further testament to excellence in sustainability, Scania won the prestigious Apollo Commercial Vehicle Award, having contested in the category of Green Product of the Year with the Scania Green Bus. As India works on its economical reforms, putting in place a blueprint for smart and sustainable cities, Scania is on firm ground to become strategic smart city partner with its offer of sustainable transport solutions. Scania, along with Swedfund, a Swedish governmental agency, will invest in a new biogas plant in Nagpur, together with the Indian private partner. This will be taking sludge from the local sewage plant and produce vehicle gas, called bio-CNG. But we in the private sector need your support to bring to attention the urgent need for sustainable and green transport. Indeed, we need each and every member of ASRTU to recognize the urgency of sustainable transport system and bring it to the attention of their respective citizens and their state governments. We are ready to partner with STRUs to demonstrate the benefits, environmental, commercial and social, of implementing green public transport systems. That will both benefit the citizens of your respective state, constituencies, and the public exchequer, and most important, the health of the population. We urge you to engage with us so that we are able to share the global best practice in sustainable mobility, as well as success stories in India on a wider scale. Thank you very much, and once again, we are committed to being India's partner in making sustainable mobility a reality here in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grunströmer. It's very interesting to watch the bus industry. Recently, we organize every 2 years a major convention, and this one took place in Milano in May, June of this year. And the bus industry was very present. And when you look at the way they look at the future, it's different from one to the other. You know, Volvo would go electric and hybrids. Here we're talking about bioethanol and biogas. Other would speak about natural gas. And so the strategy is different from one company to the other, and it's interesting because they need push from the market. Because, you know, if we do not support them, if we don't go one way, they're just waiting idle to know where to go. So I think obviously the issue is different in Europe and in the US, and here, where you're still on the diesel Euro 3 or 4, it's still quite a good achievement, but it is, I can tell you from what I saw, is the bus industry is very alive and very dynamic, and it's good news, I think, because for a long time it was less attractive than it is today. Now, you know, in our industry, that's interesting that there is also in any community the desire to make, you know, controversies or dispute, and, you know, there is the one that are pro-tramway, the one pro-metro, the one pro-BRT, the one pro-ethanol, pro-this. It's strange, but it's a sign that the community is still alive. As long as we keep our mind, you know, reasonably cold, and we make the right choice, that's not too bad. It's stimulating. And that can introduce me to our last. It's unfortunate. My mother would beat me for that, giving the word to the lady as the last speaker. But that's the way it was on the list. And maybe, you know, as you know, in some religion, the last would be the first, huh? In another world. And so we're going to listen now to Shreya Gadepalli, who is, I understand, a very well-known person in India, the community of public transport. She has been the regional director for India for the past 2 decades. She works for a very well-known Institute for Transportation Development Policy, well known as ITDP. And she's apparently that's what I learned, and she will eventually confirm. She was very much involved in the first BRT system in India. So we'll give her the word and tell us her story about, and she's from India also, so that helps also to give a hint about the last 20 years. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I have no problems having the last word. Sometimes it's good to have the last word on an argument. A very good afternoon. This is not the best slot to be in. I'm sure all of you are eager to go for lunch. I've already seen lots of people trickle out. The hall is only half full, but I take it as half full rather than half empty. So thank you for staying back for this last thing, and I hope I will not disappoint you on what I'm going to talk about. ITDP, as was just mentioned, I'm first of all thankful for ASRTU for inviting me to speak at this August gathering, so thank you, and for all of you to come listen to some ideas on how you could innovate in public transportation. We've been doing this innovation, if you will, for the last 30 years at ITDP. We were founded in 1985, so I invite you to come celebrate our 30th year. And in September in New York, we will be having a large function. So you're all invited. Incidentally, it also happens to be my 17th year just as of yesterday with ITDP. So it's been a long journey, a very fruitful journey, I would say. We promote sustainable and equitable transportation worldwide, and we've been working in India for now 17 years, and worldwide in other places like China, Indonesia, Mexico, Latin America, and in the United States, which I believe is also a developing country. That's what brought me to this place this morning. And it's quite unfortunate that we, who are talking about public transportation, have gathered in a place which is completely inaccessible by public transportation. So next time I request ASRTU to organize this gathering at a place which is accessible by public transportation, because I feel ashamed to have come by this rather than by a bus this morning. But why this? Because it's our aspiration. That's what it seems like. People aspire to have a better life, and a car is definitely a symbol of a better life. But the question is, will the aspiration remain an aspiration when you're there? How great would that aspiration be? To be stuck in traffic. And that's the future that Delhi has already seen, other Indian cities are already seeing, and there are many cities in the world which are already stuck in that future. I wonder if it's going to be aspirational at all. China, stuck. And eventually that's where we're going to be. We will build one over the other rows, like in the first level, the second level, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, God knows till what level, and we'll all be stuck in traffic. Because we aspire for a better life, stuck in traffic. Because we believe that maybe the car has the first right on the street, and not it being one amongst equals. I'm not against the use of cars, but it's one amongst equals. So let's make sure that our future is like this, where the cars don't own the streets, where people walk, cycle, use public transportation, rail, bus, whatever. But that's the future that we have to go towards. And much as I like technology, I'd like to assert that transportation is not a technical problem. It's a matter of public policy. It's a matter of deciding what is right. And that's not defined by technology. Technology can give solutions after you've decided what the priority is. So let's decide what our priority is. Because you cannot cure obesity with bigger pants. You cannot cure obesity with bigger pants, and you cannot solve traffic problems with more roads. So let's talk about public transportation. The other thing I'd like to talk about, which was also pointed out this morning, is that bus transportation carries 3 times more than rail transportation in India, not just urban, but all forms of public transportation. And within specifically urban transportation, it's very interesting that even cities which have substantial amount of rail infrastructure, and I have nothing against rail infrastructure, rail does only 1/3 of the public transportation trips. 2/3 are done by buses. So let's give buses their due. But why do rail get so much of attention? Because of this. Because rail is aspirational. Let's be clear that people aspire for a better life, and if the car is not the aspiration, then maybe the rail is the aspiration of what it is, and it is aspiration because it signifies quality. It says a public transportation user is not a second-rate citizen. They are heroes. But having said that, rail does not actually carry that much. Like, Delhi has invested in a significant network of metro rail, and it's doing a good job, but it still carries less than 10% of the total transportation requirement in the city. And by 2030, when it proposes to double its network, it will still transport only 10% of the total travel demand in the city. The majority, probably about 4 times as much of public transportation demand, will have to be solved by buses. But rail is quality. Imagine if this is what the government of India sold in the name of metro. How many would have agreed for it? How many people would have agreed for this as metro? Is this a metro? Is this a metro? Would you aspire to be traveling on that? Or would you aspire to be traveling on this? I know you're weak, you've not had lunch, but can you answer? This one, right? Not this one. So if you sell this in the name of metro, nobody's going to buy, then why is it that we are selling BRT in the name of this? Why is it that we are selling buses in the name of this? Because this is not clearly quality public transportation. What we need is this: a metro with a bus. What we really need is a metro with a bus. And that is a metro with a bus. That's the metro bus from Mexico City. Very well chosen name, I would say. And that brings me to what the topic of today's presentation is, the BRT standard. Because if we know what we want, then we need to define them in quantitative terms, in qualitative terms, what that means. And that's precisely what it is. It is defining what a bus rapid transit system is in terms of quality, capacity, safety, and speed. How do you achieve these 4 attributes of public transportation so that the BRT systems actually solve the transportation problem? It provides world-class service to passengers, and it provides economic growth, which India definitely needs, and a positive environmental impact for the country. And it's not just an old bus running in a bus lane. No, we can't buy that. We need a BRT. The basics, there are 5 basics of what a good BRT is. The first one is that buses have their own way. If a bus doesn't have its own way, it's not BRT. So buses need to have their own way so that they're not stuck in traffic and they can bypass traffic jams and provide fast services to people. But that's not enough. The second point is, often we think, where's the space for that lane? Where do we get? No, that's how our cities are. Can you tell me which Indian city this is?
It's Mexico.
What? Delhi? Old Delhi? Karol Bagh? Yeah, this is a street called Mexico City in Delhi. I'm not joking, that's Mexico City. But that's not how Mexico City is, because they clearly had a public policy decision that this street will be like this. If there is limited space, then the first right is for people to walk and use public transportation, not for cars parked. So we always have space, it's just a question of where we want to allocate that space. The second thing is, where should the bus lane be? And the bus lane should be on the fast lane, not the slow lane. And the fast lane is the one which is in the center of the street, not on the side of the street, so that they're not obstructed by vehicles which are trying to turn left, They're not obstructed by parked vehicles. They are not obstructed by slow-moving vehicles, by cycles and others. We need to get them right in the center, in the fast lane. Maybe I don't know, I should really show this, but this is a small little animation to show, like, I've been asked, but if it's in the center, how do people reach there? If it's in the center, how do you reach there? And I asked this question, if it's, let's say it's just regular public transportation and there's a person's home there and a person's office there, and a bus comes, the person takes the bus, and the bus goes to the office, and the person gets off from the bus, and the bus goes away. But in the evening, you don't get the bus on the same side. The passenger actually has to cross the entire street to go on to the other side, and then take the bus, and the bus takes them to the home, but not quite the home. It's the other side of the street. The bus goes away. Yes. I've been told it's time up. Should I stop my presentation here? So, with the approval of the hall, and I hope 30 seconds. Thank you. So if on regular public transportation a passenger has to cross a street in a day twice, a complete street, BRT does exactly the same. If the lanes were in the center, you need to travel only half that lane at any given point in time. You're crossing 2 lanes in net in the day. So it doesn't matter whether it's regular public transportation or BRT, you cross the same number of lanes. It's our job to make it safe. It's our job to make it safe and make it safe on the street. The next point of what a BRT is that we need to make sure that it's level boarding. And what do I mean by level boarding? That the level of the bus and the level of the station is the same. You cannot have steps after you go in, because steps are inaccessible for most people. They are difficult for children, they're difficult for elderly, they're impossible for wheelchairs. So what we need is something which is equal. What we need is that, where the bus comes, docks right next to the station so that you can just walk in, walk out. And this has many advantages other than convenience. It also makes it faster. Do you know the average time that a TransMilenio passenger takes is 1/3 of a second to get in or out, because you have wide doors and you have same level boarding. So there are many advantages. I'll give this presentation, it's public later. I don't want to get into every single thing, but the point is, if you make it level boarding, it's also going to be more efficient, and bus rapid transit will become rapid, as it says it will be. The fourth is the off-board fare collection, which is to make sure that you pay before you enter the bus, again, to add to the efficiency of the system, but also to the convenience of passengers. And last but not the least, ensure that intersections function properly and to give priority to the bus, which means that instead of having 4 phases or 6 phases or 8 phases of traffic signals, make it 2 and make sure that 50% of the time the bus has its right of way. And right turns are prohibited, and you can arrange them in various other ways to get passengers or people in other vehicles to still use that turns. Beyond the basics, there's a whole scoring system. There's this called the BRT standard. If you want to look at it, I can show it to you. And you can download it, it's free, on the brtstandard.org. There are issues of service planning. How do you plan a BRT system? There are issues of infrastructure design. There are issues of how the station and the bus needs to function. There are issues of the integration and access. How do you bring people to public transportation by walk, cycle, by paratransit and all these. And last but not the least, the branding and communication aspects. The whole idea at the end of the day is buses are operated like trains, but also that buses use their own flexibility to reach last mile. So the idea is create metro with buses, but with the benefit of buses. And you can do that. TransMilenio has shown that, many other cities have shown that BRT can actually match the capacities of metro. You can carry 30,000, 45,000 passengers per hour per direction. Whatever the demand is, you can actually carry it. And I want to pretty much end there. Build metro with buses. You can download the standard wherever you want. I hope I did not keep you too long from lunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can see that the ladies are both expert and passionate at the same time. That's, as I said earlier, in our community, you have the one that are favoring one and the other favoring mode of transportation. I think, it's a lot of, it's worth discussing that on a case by case, depending on the circumstance. Just one thing, in my country, for instance in Paris, the buses are not at all transporting the same number of people than the metro people. But that's one example. London is different, so I don't think there is a universal rule. But eventually, BRT is certainly a good option and a cheap option in large cities like those in India. Oh, okay, now we're close to lunch. The one who are daring to raise questions, they know what they're doing to their colleagues, instead of prolonging the... But, of course, questions are most welcome. It's a year where, you know, that public transport is becoming part of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. It's this year that it's going to be decided and negotiated. And then in Paris, the COP21 is taking place. And I think it's a huge opportunity to push public transportation in the middle of the political debate about the future of the world. And I think India is obviously, as a major country, should be part of that big discussion and show also that in this country there are plans to develop public transportation to make life a bit better in our cities. But anybody brave, ready to ask the first questions to one of the remaining member of this panel?
I just want to make a comment.
Please.
And for closure. This discussion on BRT is very relevant because we need this priority to make our bus systems much more efficient. But in most of the cases, what we need is a basic bus service that provides quality, reliable service to the people. And BRT will be a part of this mix of modes and solutions that the city needs. We have been working, for instance, with the city of Bangalore on improving just the way the services are provided, and enormous benefits, even without the infrastructure. Of course, with the infrastructure it will be much, much better. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
If I can add just...
Please. You know, that's a competition between the two BRT promoters here, so...
It's not competition, it's supporting what Dario just now said. We've done some calculations as to what really India needs, and what we believe is that we need around 5,000 kilometers of BRT to come up in the next 15 years if we really want to solve our public transportation problem, but that's not enough. In addition to the 5,000 kilometers of BRT, we need also a standing fleet of around 2.5 lakh buses, a standing fleet of about 2.5 lakh buses. And that's also not enough, because we also need about 30,000 kilometers of footpaths, and we also need about 20,000 kilometers of cycle tracks, and we also need hundreds of thousands of bike-sharing bikes in the city if we want to solve it all. So let's make sure that we have the right future rather than the future where you're trying to solve obesity with bigger pants.
Thank you.
I think it's a good conclusion. Maybe the next time you make a conference on funding, because that's basically the issue. Yeah, okay. So I wish you bon appétit, as we say in French. Enjoy your meal, and thanks to the panelists, and a big applause for them for what they proposed you.
Thank you. Session chair and experts. May I please request our speakers to kindly remain with us, because we have a small tradition of giving mementos. And to do the honors, may I first request our session chair in his capacity as chair to kindly present the mementos to our speakers. May I please request you to kindly present the memento to Ms. Shreya Gadipalli, because she was the last speaker, but we'll present her the memento first if it is of any consolation. May I request you to kindly present a memento to Mr. Dario Hidalgo. To Mr. Andres Kronstomer. And last but not least, to Mr. Lohia. And on behalf of ASRTU, may I request Mr. Anand Rao to kindly present a memento to our session chair, Mr. Alan Plosh. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just inform you that the live webcast for this conference is going on, and if you would like to have a look, it is on the website www.arstuevent.org. May I please request you to kindly join us back at 3 p.m. for the next session. Thank you.